That's our song. Thank you, Steven. Welcome to the Cinematographologically Speaking podcast. Today, we are so thrilled, so pleased, so lucky to be talking about Orson Welles' 1975 blend of documentary, fiction, and essay, F for Fake. Does that seem fair that I said it like that?
That seems fair to me, yeah.
Okay. Steven's looking a bit unamused, but we go on. So I'm Troy.
I'm John.
Yeah, I'm Steven.
I'm Tanner.
I'm Brody.
Woo! We are not joined by Jacob today. He might he's alienating himself. All right. So we'll do brief thoughts or whatever. What do we call it? Brief thoughts, and then maybe someone will have something to say. So this was like my fourth or fifth viewing.
Holy shit.
I love this movie. I think it's so fun, so interesting, just a total masterclass in editing, and it's just so fun, so interesting. I don't even know. It's just every time it's a wild ride, you know? Like some movies it's a wild ride, but then the second time you kind of know what's going on. I don't know. Every time I watch it, it's just a real wild ride. Fun, funny, simpatico, as they say in Chinese. Just a good time.
Yeah, the whole thing is super fun, super entertaining. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the kind of movie you could watch like 100 times and it never gets old, just because it's just like, I don't know, there's so much like personality to the whole thing, and I don't know, there's just so many layers of like interest.
Like, I don't know how many times you two are gonna lie to our viewers and tell them that what we watched is some great film. Okay, this shit sucked. It was trash. It was boring, and I'm just kidding. It was really good.
Oh my god,
Steven!
dude,
It was
a
really
masterclass
good.
in fakery.
Oh my god, he's from Charlotte.
Dude, just like the movie.
Just like...
He's doing just like the movie.
Charlotte.
Charlatan, you.
So
It
true.
was very good.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very good. Virtually flawless.
Ooh.
Those are my thoughts.
I'm also on board. Great movie, great film, great editing, great message. Love the message.
You like the point of this movie, huh?
I like the point.
I like the
Yeah,
point.
I'm on board. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the point too. And
Yeah, I like the point.
John, Steven?
Yes, I like the point.
I like the shaft.
Ooh,
like the hilt.
Oh, you like the whole thing?
I like the thing you hold it by.
Worth noting that this was somewhat of Brody had some outsized influence here. He was tired of all the Euro trash and insisted that we watch some good old American patriotic cinema.
I'm patriotic.
Brody's a patriot. And so anyway, this is our first American film we've talked about, right?
It's the first American film Troy's ever seen.
Yeah, it's actually the first American film I've seen.
And the only one he'll ever watch.
Yeah.
Because he hates America.
Well, because it's not about America. I don't know if it was made in America.
Right.
You know,
Oji is certainly not American.
Oja Kodar, with that
Yeah.
chiseled face of hers. No way. More like a Greek goddess than any American swine.
So true.
So true. So brave. Well, all right, man. What is this movie about? Yeah, maybe Brody, what's the point, Brody? What's this movie about? Tell us.
You're gonna... I really have to do this?
Yeah. What's the movie about? Sum it up.
It's the relationship between... Maybe not the relationship. It's a commentary about fakeness in art, and I think that it has something... There's an idea in there somewhere about what, like, fake art really means and what like art necessarily means and what qualifies as art. All right, everybody's giving me soy face. You passed on to me, make me try to fucking explain it, and I'm getting teased.
I'm sorry.
All right, somebody else take it
I
away.
thought that was good.
Whoa, yeah.
We're just having fun.
That wasn't what I was.
I'm
That's
sorry.
not what it looked
I'm
like.
sorry. That was mean.
How was I supposed to know when I'm getting a bunch of soy
For
faces
the viewers at
in my
home,
fucking Discord?
we were all making a funny face at Brody as he summed up this one.
While I'm trying to explain the fucking movie.
What about what about this? You know, I think right. It's right. He opens up with this. He tells us what the film is about, or at least, you know, quote unquote, this film, because in the first bit he's referencing multiple films that I don't know. It's kind of all over the place, right? But he says, you know, this is a film about trickery, about fakery, whatever. But the first lines of the film, you know, have to do with. What does he say? Who can recount, like, the start of the film? Like, what's the first?
For the next hour. I'm
No.
not gonna lie to you.
Oh, that's like 20 minutes in. For my next
That's fine.
experiment, this is the opening lines. For my next experiment, ladies and gentlemen, I would appreciate the loan of any small personal object from your pocket. A key or a box of matches, a coin. Ah, a key it is, good sir.
Oh,
Hold it
right.
up 10 feet over your head. Anyway, so he takes this, right, he performs this magic trick, as, you know, he's Orson Welles, he's in this train station, he performs this magic trick for this child, right? And it's all about this key to the coin, to the key, and back and forth, right? And he keeps giving it back. He takes it from the kid, he turns it into a coin, and then says, "Where's the key? It's in your pocket. Take it out." And he takes the key back, and then turns it into a coin, and then back into a key, and does this thing. And then at the end of that little thing, he says, "The key, I promise, is not symbolic of anything," or whatever. Yeah. Which is the first line, or something. Anyway, but just that whole introductory section I love. But I feel like that's kind of, I'm sort of referencing this essay I sort of sent, where like taking from the viewer, I don't know, this constant interplay between the viewer and the trickery, like a magician does, where like it's like a magician constantly plays on, right, giving you impressions of something and managing your expectations, and also playing off of your expectations in this whole back and forth thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing works because, like, the magician or whatever in the audience, whoever's, like, they've agreed to be tricked by something they know is, like, fake or whatever. And, yeah, and I think, like, this whole opening sequence, he introduces every element of kind of illusion that he's going to be using throughout the whole film. Because first he has this whole kind of, like, metaphor or whatever with the key and kind of, like, the audience agreeing to go along for the ride or whatever with what he's about to tell. And then he has this whole thing with, like, there's a Oya Kodar or whatever, like, she walks past the train, like, window or whatever, and then that shot repeats multiple times. So, I mean, he, like, shows, like, I'm going to be showing things multiple times, like, in different contexts and things like this. And then he shows the other documentary filmmaker, I forget his name, Reichenbach, right?
Yeah.
And okay, but yeah, so he shows him, like, filming him, and so then you're aware that, like, what you're watching is being filmed. But then there's, like, another element to that, because when he shows him filming him, then suddenly the documentary guy, he acknowledges the camera that's filming him. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, in this opening sequence, he kind of, like, very quickly displays and shows to the viewer, like, what you're being shown is real and edited by me or whatever, and, like, you can accept it or you can't, or you don't accept it, and if you accept it, then I'll take you along for this ride or whatever. But I don't know, he makes the viewer aware in the first 5 minutes of kind of, like, all of the kind of tactics and techniques and like, the nature of the film you're about to watch.
Is that your mother? Oh no, of course it's not. Just about.
Oh, yeah.
I thought Brody's description was much better.
Is that true?
Well, I don't know. I feel like what we've been saying is basically not even in response to the question of what the film is about. Although sort of, I usually like to look to the beginning or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean the
I mean,
film.
I mean,
the,
I think that was accurate, or about like the first scene in particular. Not necessarily about like the broad
Yeah.
idea of what the film is about necessarily.
yeah, I mean I
Um,
think. Oh, sorry.
I don't know, like it is interesting. I don't know. I don't really know how to put this exactly. Just I'll just say it's interesting, the idea of fake art and the idea of experts and this sort of thing, and like the idea of the lie, but it sort of reminds me of that like Hanukkah quote, like the film is 24 or 30 lies per second in the service of truth, or something like that, which is that the story within itself isn't true, but it is in service of something that is more true.
Yeah, right. And Wells.
And
sorry.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Yeah, Wells says like almost similar line near the end. He's like, something about lies that reveal the truth or something. But
Right, exactly.
maybe for a little context, right? Like Wells at this time, there's allegations made by this dude, I forget his name, who wrote this essay or
It's a
wrote this
woman.
thing, an article called "Raising Cain." Cain spelled as in Citizen Kane, where basically it's alleged that like Orson Welles wasn't really the author of Citizen Kane, but rather was this other guy. And
Okay.
so that was like a really annoying thing. I imagine obviously that figures in a lot into this whole thing about authenticity and experts and fakes and fake fakes and
Mhm.
whatever. And also sort of what you're saying, because like there's some phrase, again, I'm pulling not from this essay, this thing, but documentary film or a scripted film. In a scripted film, the director is God, and in a documentary, God is the director. And in this film, the director is a character
Mhm.
and is a god via editing. Yet, like, it's
Mhm.
still true. Like Elmir and all these people, it's all real, so to say. Except for whatever Oyo Kodar is like this kind of interweaving total fiction.
Right.
And although it's maybe unrelated, just a fun fact: Elmir, after this film was released, Elmir was extradited to France and subsequently immediately committed suicide.
So Almir
Nice.
is a real
Yeah, Elmir, that's actually Elmir.
like
He's
fake artist.
Yes, everything about, I mean, yeah, so like
The whole scandal is real.
to be clear, Elmir, Irving, stuff, all these characters, we're actually looking at them and they actually are fakers. And the film is starts out. So this guy, who is the guy? The other director, filmmaker that Wells is working with here. I can't find his name. So he's making a film about Elmir, and then he had also previously made a film about Wells. So he goes to Wells with this footage and says, "Hey, I want you to narrate for me." Wells looks at the footage and says, "Whoa, like there's something bigger here. We can do something bigger." So then they go to film more. Wells then enters the picture and is like, "All right, let's go get more footage." And he goes there.
Mhm.
And while he's filming, Irving had already published his book Fake about Elmir. And then at the conclusion of their filming, Irving conducts his own hoax with the writing the fake autobiography of whatever, what's his name?
I don't remember, but
the
I
Rudyard
remember that
Kipling,
part.
Hughes.
Hughes,
Howard
yeah,
Hughes.
writes his fake autobiography of Hughes. Anyway, so then they start filming that, and then all this stuff, and then blah blah blah. So, I forget what this was to say. Just background, I guess.
It is real. Or the
Yeah.
story.
There
yeah,
is a
it
lot
is.
of
Yeah, so
actual
it did
documentarian
actually.
work being done,
Okay.
as well as like sort of, and Wells threads in his own tale and story of Citizen Kane, but also War of the Worlds and all that stuff. Although I feel like he underplays it. I don't know. What do we got? It just, to me, the film feels like such a whirlwind. And like every moment there's something you want to point out and be like, oh, this is, oh, the way he expected me to, and this, and oh, that's funny, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's hard to come
and
away
there's definitely
with,
a lot of like times when like I was like so many like pieces of information were like coming at me and being weaved together, and like it was almost like jarring in some sense. Like it was very like, it felt very like non-linear. Does that make sense?
yeah, it's all over the place. He keeps,
Yeah, it's like all over the place, but it's all in service of like the same sort of narrative, but it isn't like a direct line through it. It's like a bunch of like jumbled up pieces that are like scrambled together, it feels like.
yeah, he says, he's like, there's this moment about 20 minutes in where it transitions to something a little more concrete and starts to actually tell the story of the first film, as he says, about Elmire. And it's like he's jumping all around from all these different things, and he keeps acknowledging that it's crazy. And then there's this part where the film reel becomes loose off the editing table and starts flying around. He's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's falling apart again. Well, I mean, that's how it was, or something like this. He talks about like the way we're experiencing, the way he felt, experiencing it, but also editing it. Anyway, and then he puts the film reel back on, and then it becomes a little more focused on the story of Elmire. But yeah, it's hard. It feels hard to come away with anything general to say that isn't sort of a bit cliche, right? Like you want, like if like to talk about whatever the jokingly previously mentioned point of the film. Like one probably wants to look to like the Chartres section, wherein like authorship is discussed, and blah blah blah, and we're all gonna die, go on singing, which actually is super epic, right? But I don't know. I don't know. You know what, Steven, what do you got?
It seemed like everything that's being described, it sounds very metafictional. It was very metafictional, in the sense that, and the first thing that comes to mind is Pale King, because that's like my only other like experience with like such like like a testament to like what metafiction can do and feel like. And by metafiction, I just mean where the creator, so the director in this sense, is able to both craft a narrative about something, consistently interject themselves into the narrative, and convince the viewer that like various details are correct or true about them, but it's all in service of a fabricated narrative. And by fabricated narrative, obviously we know that the art thief situation is all documentarian. The same way I think lots of The Pale King, lots of it is obviously inspired by Dave Foster Wallace's actual life. And so, but there's clearly some sort of like eroding of what actually could have happened. I don't know how much actually occurred. Clearly the documentarian aspect of the times where they're at parties and things like that, but then there's times where like Wells is like in the party or like inserted into the party.
Yeah.
And I don't really understand how real some of those are. Some of those seem real, some of those don't. And then other times the obvious cases, and they become more blatant as time goes on, but like when they have the author and the artist both responding to an interviewer's questions.
Yeah.
And he has them positioned such that it's as if they're talking to each other,
Yeah, a lot.
Right. And I think that became super apparent during one scene where it was like super like, I mean, they just had like a back and forth and it was kind of like jarring. So because of that, like it becomes clear that the editing is transpiring.
Yeah, there's tons of fake conversations, like constructed.
Right, fake conversations. Right. Yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I don't know.
Just on that note too, I think there's conversations too where, right, there's conversations where like different people, real people, are playing other real characters. Like Wells plays Elmire, like there will be switching back and forth between Elmire and Wells, particularly when they're explaining, like they're justifying their actions or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Where all the language is coming from Elmire, but Wells is like saying half of it, and then it goes to Elmire continuing the thought.
Mhm.
And, well, that's just a big thing. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know if that was. You said he's playing Elmire. I don't know if that's. I mean, how would he be playing Elmire?
He's not necessarily playing him, but he's like juxtaposing them as being like the same figure or something in the film.
Well, no,
like that right? I mean, like to think about them in the same way.
Well, I'm just saying I'm pretty sure multiple times are different characters, but the one I'm thinking of right now is like Elmire is telling a story, and then Wells has edited himself in, like cut out blocks of Elmire telling the story, and it's him telling the same story.
Mhm.
So it's like one story being told, but it cuts back and forth between Elmire or Wells telling it. And yeah, like Steve would say, lots of fake conversations. I thought it was so funny when Elmire, they have some footage of Elmire at a party where he's like, oh, your shirt is so distasteful.
Yeah.
And it looks to the filmmaker guy, and he's wearing the most absurd
Right.
shirt. He's clearly not at the party, but he's like standing, like he's pretending to be at the party. Like all these fake little interactions.
Did any of you feel like bad for Elmire? Like he wasn't like getting like the recognition maybe he like deserved, or maybe like you felt like all like the artists, especially the one that he was imitating the most, was in some sense like a fraud within himself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wait, what do you mean?
Well, maybe we
Fraud
should
with
check.
him?
Well, so
like,
So he was like, he was like, so sitting there, and he's like, he'd paint something like really quick. He'd said that he like paint like 3 of these paintings in like an afternoon, and then the experts would come in and they would examine these paintings for 2 hours and tell you all of them were legitimate. But, it's like, well, if these all look legitimate, like how good can the paintings actually be?
well,
and-
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think necessarily like the time spent on it or whatever. I mean, there's like tons of cases of like people who are considered great artists or whatever that make great art or whatever, making stuff in an extremely short amount of time. But the thing is like if you buy like kind of Wells' argument or his kind of framing of the story or whatever, I think it's hard not to feel bad for Elmire because, I mean, he is a great artist by every standard besides the fact that what he's making is not assigned to his name or something,
Right.
So
it's like, he's just as, you can say like maybe he's just as good as the artist he's imitating. The only thing that he doesn't have is the status. And
maybe
Or
we
the
should,
originality.
like, check in. Yeah, I mean, originality and vision is all like. I think we should probably check in and actually talk about like, what do we think of the what do we think of the fakeries or these, because it seems like, right, there's all this conversation in the film about.
well, and then there's
Does it matter the authorship if it's great art? Blah blah blah.
yeah, and then there's that line where it's like even Picasso can make a fake Picasso.
Yeah. I mean,
So like there's something about genuine art, but like what it is exactly isn't easy to pinpoint and isn't easy to describe. At least I couldn't do it, and clearly neither could the experts because they don't really know what it is either.
Oh yeah, because they're like about authenticating the art or whatever is real. Like they're not concerned with kind of the point that Wells tries to make with like the Kipling poem, where he talks about Adam like making a sketch in the mold, and he says in the first rude sketch that the world had seen was joy to his mighty heart, and then till the devil whispered behind the leaves, it's pretty, but is it art? And like I think the point being that like any kind of, or I mean the point that Wells uses the line being or in service of is something like any kind of like authentication or like even the process of trying to decide whether it's art or whether it's good is to avoid like what really makes it art or something, which is as he says with like Shart or whatever, it being like a celebration. And that he says something like Shart is like the last like this might be like our last celebration or something, and it's made into the glory of God and all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the devil is the one who poses the question of classification.
Mhm.
Is something art, and experts are the ones who claim to respond to the answer with. Experts are those who claim to answer the question. But
Right.
I feel, I mean,
I don't think they ever answer that question though. Their job is never to say whether something is or is not art. It's just to associate it with, like, assign contiguity with the art, with the artist.
yeah, but
Like-
right, but the idea being like if it's a fake, it's not what it would be.
It doesn't hang in the museum. Like, it doesn't hang in the museum. It doesn't, like, like, the whole idea of, like, it going, like, a museum buying it or whatever, it's like, there's obviously some kind of social, like, agreement or something that, like, the things in this museum are great art or whatever, or this is what great art is. And so the experts more or less decide what is allowed to be seen as great by, like, the museums, because the museums wouldn't buy it if it was called a fake, even if it was, like, amazing.
Yeah, in my mind, what's really at work though when you go to a museum is not to see great works of art, but instead to see works of art by people, by artists. And so we associate that with great art. But for instance, if you go to like a small hole in the wall museum that's doing some sort of local showing of a local artist, like
Mhm.
there's no guarantee that art's great or even good, but there is the guarantee that it's by that artist. So I think that's what the that's where the failing in the experts is that they can't even attribute the art to the artist. But I don't like. I see more, for instance, like saying something is great art. I see that actually less as the expert's problem and more as like a market problem or something like that. And the experts are involved in that, but only insofar as people make the connections between what is displayed in the museum is great art, but that the experts aren't actually the driving force behind that. Instead, that's like the true motivating force is the desire to obtain valuable art. It's not actually the experts. The experts just play the middleman in the whole thing.
Yeah, they're gatekeepers of sorts. Like they're 1 degree separation from just declaring something as valuable.
And then,
Right.
so do you think this is also to say something about like the market, or like maybe commodities like as a whole? Because there's this one scene where they're talking about like the market of art, and they're, like panning to all these like fast food restaurants and all sorts of these other things like in LA, and I don't know. It was difficult for me to like understand like what that could have been trying to say. It could have just been talking about like commodification as a whole, like just scenery for, what is considered to be like the market, or it could have been something along the lines of like fast food is fake or some shit like that. I don't know. Let's see if I can find
He
this
does
thing.
say that though, right? Like what's in our food has become fake.
Yeah, talking about
Yeah,
seafood
right.
and
It's
stuff.
funny.
I don't know if it was
And
at
then he
that
says-
point.
And then he says something. Yeah, he says something like, "This restaurant, I can assure you there are no fakes," or something like that. And it was
Yeah.
where Lautrec was,
It was
something or other, right?
Veg-
It's like
Yeah.
seafood or something.
It was where Elmir's original, right? It was like some V name,
Oh yeah.
but it was
I don't
Elmir.
know.
Elmir had painted fakes all up in this like restaurant or something. Is what I thought.
There's a V name. I'm not sure if the ones displayed there are from Elmir though.
Yeah,
I
I
know
think
that
No, 'cause
Elmir
that's-
ends up doing fakes of that V name.
Well, no, I don't know, but I just remember that's the sequence where the conversation of Elmir's origins takes place, where Orson starts telling Elmir's story as if he's on, like they do that switch and forth I was talking about a minute ago, but I'm trying to find it a bit, but I forget the name. Yeah.
So, do you think that it's the people who are trying to obtain the art are the ones who like don't truly understand or care about what qualifies something as great art? Do you understand the question or no?
Yeah, I think that in some cases that's true, in other cases not. But to want to own a Picasso simply because it's by Picasso is obviously, in my mind, not exact. That's like valuing the commodity of art greater
Mhm.
than the art itself. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy a Picasso piece so much that you want to obtain it and have it
Mhm.
and display it, you know? But that's just, yeah, it varies between each purchaser, I think.
Right. Because it's like the actual like greatness of the artist that can elevate him or her to a status that uh that makes their art actually like that valuable enough to be put in like a museum and to be even like have fakeries of that somebody could like ride their tailcoats. But once they reach that level of status, it almost doesn't even matter. Like the value of the artist becomes lost to its commodification. Maybe.
Yeah, I think a way, just to sort of pose maybe the question in a similar way, I think the end section that is truly fiction with Oya Kodar and the Picasso and the Oya Kodar's father or grandfather, I feel like this is like a distillation of like the ethical question. You know, like one, like you could say, you know, the question is something like, you know, is it a good thing, like, you know, with reference to the story, is it a good thing that, I'm going to call him the grandfather made this Picasso period,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, is this a good thing for the world? And similarly, is it a good thing that Elmire committed all these fakes? Like, is this awesome? There's all this great art in the world, right? Like, someone else makes great art and he mimics the style so as to create more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Although, obviously, there's something important about origin when talking about what is great. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like
Yeah.
someone makes some like super heartfelt whatever versus someone who just like traces it or something. But
Well,
yeah, is it a good thing that all these, you know, if Elmire's done all these hundreds of fakes and they're all out there and they're enjoyed and loved by people and blah blah blah, right? Is this like an ultimately good thing, or did he do something wrong? And did he do something wrong? But it's
well, it's
okay.
something that's strange, and I think so. Is okay. So like all like art and like all ideas are going to be built off of somebody else's previous work, unconsciously or consciously. And then so you could say like perhaps the grandfather in this fictional narrative was producing their own works of art, um or sorry, was producing works of art underneath their own name and was simply taking Picasso as an influence. And then but those things could like only be valuable because of the like the commodification, that it becomes more valuable to actually like be associated with the name rather than like the actual art itself. So I think I forgot where I was going with this point. Like
If you release it under his
I
own
don't
name,
know.
like Elmire tried to make his own art, it doesn't succeed.
Right.
So maybe
Well,
like by putting
but
it
in
in
some
Picasso's
sense that's
name, you bring
but in
more
some
joy.
sense Almir is different because you could say that Almir doesn't have a creative vision and couldn't produce something um actually like great by himself and can only succeed in the realm of fakery. While in the narrative sense, the grandfather, like perhaps he was making something that was genuinely great.
I think he's doing the same thing as Elmer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But no, I think what
their motives can be different, but I think they're both making fakes.
they're both
Like,
making
I think-
fakes.
and each lacks a true creative personal vision.
I mean, they're both making fakes, but I think what distinguishes the grandfather is his whole point is I've made an entire Picasso, what does he call it, era or
Period.
phase or something, where he's like, you jump from
Period.
phase to phase like Elmire seems like he.
But he would copy each one every time he changed.
Yeah, but this time he was ahead of Picasso. He created a Picasso phase that Picasso hadn't. He had actually.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
that
He
case,
had
yeah.
actually, because I think in the story, whatever, like Picasso hasn't done stuff recently, and then Picasso is back with a brave new vision and a new era. Gone is blue, and now we've got this.
Yeah, and you can consider that like progression of art that like could be like an influence of Picasso, and then I don't know, but it could like something like that could only succeed, and perhaps maybe this is an some sort of commentary on like the modernity of the art world, which is like it could only succeed now off the back of somebody else who is already successful in the commodification of the art world, and perhaps maybe in time past that maybe I'm sure it was always like that, but either way, like
So, one thing that comes to mind, but I don't know much about the idea, is Harold Bloom, who talks about how all the great authors are inspired by the agon, which is the idea that, and poets, that you have to kill the previous generation's icons of what good art is in order to be a great artist. And it's actually this extreme antagonistic view against the art world and against the previous generation's great art is what drives like innovation in art, in truly great art. It's like that's what he identifies in, each like each next chapter of like English literature, is like an extreme attempt to distance themselves from the previous generation. Of course they synthesize and of course they draw inspiration from, because they can't help but to draw something from the previous generation, but that they're so radically different and oriented towards some personal vision, and they seem to do it like so like antagonistically, that what comes through is like great art, like in a special and unique way that like you can tell if you're in the art world, if you're well read, if you understand the history, that there's just certain moments where an artist or an art piece comes along and it absolutely does blow the fucking roof off,
Like Citizen
right,
Kane.
it's something that's like genuinely creative and unique.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But you can only understand uniqueness within the context of like understanding the past, which is kind of strange.
Kind of, but I mean,
Bro,
you
outside
can also
art.
like if you just picked up Ulysses and tried reading it, like you would understand that it's so absolutely different than other pieces around that time period. Like, and then you would see pieces later on that would be like, so you don't need like this vast swath of like, you don't have to read Shakespeare and Homer to understand that Ulysses is unique for its time.
But but do you think like Ulysses or maybe like other great pieces of art are intentionally antagonistic towards what is currently being made? But if it's intentionally antagonistic, then it almost like couldn't be a thing without the antagonist, what it is trying to distance itself from.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So it's like
It's not just
like
what's being made. It's what the previous greats were.
right, and then so it's like, but even in originality, it's still in some sense like drawing from what it is trying to distance itself from.
Yeah, for sure.
Wacky.
Well, but it comes through in the art. I don't know. I think that it's like.
Yeah, well,
I don't
it's
think
just
you
strange
have
because it's
to
like
be
because it's like you have the idea that like if it's completely antagonistic, that it's original, but it can't be truly original because it's drawing itself from something else, no matter what. It has to.
Yeah, the claim is never that it's original.
Okay.
It's just that they're inspired to be original. The claim is never that they can manage that.
Okay.
Is it a good thing what Elmire did?
It's not a bad thing. It like it says in the film, like he couldn't exist without the commodification of the art. Without it, he would be a nobody, because I think it's sort of insinuated in the film that he doesn't actually have a creative vision.
Yeah, Irving says that. I
Yeah,
think the other line.
and he has really nothing to offer.
Well, doesn't he? I don't know.
I mean,
Well,
maybe
he
it's
paints-
good.
The only thing he has. Wait, someone gonna say something?
Joll?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I wish I could like look at the paintings and know anything about the artist that he's replicating or anything to have like my own opinion on how good it is or something. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know. I mean, he was making paintings that were like a couple of the portraits were ones that had never been seen before or whatever because they didn't exist. Like, so I mean, what he's replicating is like a style, but he's still creating like new art.
Yeah, all of them are new.
Yeah, but he
Yeah, they're
lives
all
under the thumb of the previous generation.
And I would also say,
Yeah.
because I would also say that he isn't really making new art, because a lot of the things that made, I don't know much about this artist, but I'm assuming that part of what makes him great is the fact that he has unlocked this sort of style, this call it originality or antagonist to the previous greats. And it's through that creative vision, quotations, original vision, is what actually made the artist great. And then he is simply riding the coattails of his previous vision. Because it's not that what the original artist was making was technically great or anything like that, but rather he had the vision to create this style that happens to be easily imitatable, or at least easily imitatable by the faker himself. So, but what actually made the artist great was the originality, quotations, of the vision. Does that make sense?
Well, it's definitely both. Luckily, I am an actual expert on art and painting.
Good thing you're here then.
World's foremost, actually. I took an impressionism course. I mean, definitely right, but it's both. It's like, I mean, I think a lot of this is just analogous to Citizen Kane, where you have an innovation, right? So like, yeah, you have like, they're imitating Picasso or Monet, right? You look at Monet's like short strokes and the innovative study of light on like a static object but dynamic lighting, and like all these things. It's like, oh, this is so new and exciting. He's pushing the boundaries of what painting is, right? So then someone does the same thing, just the way Citizen Kane, invents like deep focus and other perspective, new perspective tools, and then a bunch of people come after, right, and just make films like that. Like, I feel like now I'm forgetting his name. Elmire is like someone who, like, you look at like any film today, like any, a lot of like Hollywood film or whatever is just an amalgamation of strategies innovated on in the past, right? And then they just like reworkshop them into something of the same style.
Yeah.
So you have like Jaws, and then you get a bunch of movies that try and recreate this like, innovative suspense. You have stuff like this, but Elmire puts their name on it. Yeah, they're all new. They're all new works, but the works are also beautiful. Like Citizen Kane isn't so loved just because of deep focus. It's so loved because of the story. Right, like Monet makes beautiful paintings,
but it has only reached its status in like the film world because of its innovation, because of its originality. And I don't think it could have done that had it been a great story that was effectively what has already been made.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out it's both. And so,
well, but I'm saying both is absolutely required.
Yes. But what? Yeah. So what? Go on.
You posed the question though. Is it good what he's doing, or is it okay what he's doing? Right.
Yeah.
And I think the answer, like, I mean, obviously to the world it's not bad. Like, obviously to some external, he hasn't done anything in itself bad. But you said Elmire kills himself, right?
Yeah, he gets extradited.
And,
I mean, I could check it out, but yeah, he gets extradited and commits suicide.
I imagine that he understands that he's living his life as a fraud. Not just, and no matter how much like lying he does to himself, it's not enjoyable to just constantly put your name on somebody else's art if you love art. Now, maybe one could do that if they were like a sociopathic craftsman that doesn't care about art itself and they're doing it just for money and they get some kick out of it that way. But I think if Elmire truly cared about art and being an artist, especially as it seems like he did when he was younger, and then to have to do this, it feels to himself like a violation, and that's because he's constantly. It's like living under like the name of your household or your father for your entire life. You never get actualized, and like art is clearly like I think a method for self-actualization and self-expression, and that these are totally Elmire is a testament to like what art is, which I think is just like craftsmanship or something. If it's not meant to relay like yourself or something like that.
Which takes us back to the Kipling poem, right?
Maybe if you could you connect it? I don't.
Yeah. I mean that like the Adam sat under the tree and scratched with a stick in the mold. The first rude sketch of the world had seen was joy to his mighty heart. So it's like it's him self-actualizing. It's his.
Until it was
yeah,
his mighty heart
till the devil whispered behind the leaves, it's pretty, but is it art? So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that the enterprise requires the whole thing. Like you can't just like give in to the devil's temptation there. Like obviously like, and I don't agree with this Picasso could make a fake Picasso. That's not true at all. I think that like Picasso could say this is not good. I'm dissatisfied with what I've just made. I'm never going to sell this and then burn it, sure. But what he makes is Picasso no matter what. I don't see it as like that. To me is kind of ridiculous. And
yeah, because
who makes that claim?
Yeah, because like implied in that is that like there's some kind of idea of what a Picasso is, and that Picasso can like conform to it or not conform to it. Yeah,
and that's so gross. Can you imagine? Oh, like that's just that means there's a total separation between your identity as you and your identity as the artist, and that's gross in my mind. That sounds like a really bad thing for a person.
Well, I think that's for a person. I think that's a lot of what's happening is the commodification of Picasso as like this concept and not a person.
Yeah,
like evidenced by the person saying
say...
they made a Picasso era, right? As if Picasso's like a brand. And I also want to throw in that someone in the film says that Picasso said, "I can do a fake Picasso."
Yeah, which like we don't
just
even
to be
know
clear, we don't know if Picasso
like,
actually said this.
Yeah, but then also
I think Wells says it or something like that.
Yeah, he does.
And he's a charlatan.
I get the he's a charlatan. I get the I think it's what's so gross about like when people are it's just annoying when people complain about like a film director or whatever, and they're like they come out with a film and they're like, yeah, this was totally not like their film, you know what I mean? They're like, this was so like with Trier or whatever, like this was not a Trier film, like, or this was so unlike Trier to make this or something like that, which like I don't know, I mean it's just putting first the idea that like there's some kind of thing that they have to fulfill as opposed to brand.
But aren't in some sense like when people say that they're, if anything, it's like kind of a compliment, like they have created this original part of art that they're appealing to? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
No, yeah. I mean, I think most of the time when there's like a director and like you see like a huge change or whatever in their work, but with like the same like dedication or whatever to some kind of like higher goal or something like this, like it's almost always a good thing. Like I like seeing that. But I mean, what I was quoting or like saying, like the phenomenon I was commenting on was when people say it as a negative thing, which I think a lot of people do because they get attached to their idea of the artist as opposed to the actual point of what they're doing, which is much more personal and subjective in self-actualization.
I did some research, and it appears to be that is a real quote to say that that 3 paintings were brought to Picasso. He says they're fake. He says, but I've watched you paint these with my own eyes. And then Picasso shrugged, I often paint fakes.
I wonder if that's Picasso,
What an idiot.
like being. Well, I wonder if
Yeah,
that's him
he's
being
really
like
wrong.
tongue in cheek or something about like his own like knowledge of
Yeah,
like his own awareness of his of that he's become a brand, or whether
Yeah,
it's
that's
him
what-
being.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to interpret that quote.
Yeah.
Like Michael Bay
Yeah.
makes Michael Bay films. I mean, honestly, right?
Makes a fake Michael Bay film.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
and Bergman makes Bergman movies. Like, but
Hey,
the thing is,
hey.
like, but the thing is,
Too
the
far.
thing is like when they change up,
Yeah,
that's I think is a sign of growth. I like that, and
yeah.
I think it's actually really like, and that's captured in some sense in the fictional narrative at the end when he talks about all these different phases and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that seems essential to be an artist, and so that's why the grandfather in this case I think is, more than Elmire is an artist, because he creates the new phase, creates the new Picasso phase.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, he's still like there is still just some danger of the name being associated with Picasso, and I mean for
And if
him.
you-
I don't mean for the world. I don't like Is it good for him to do it? I don't think it matters about what the world is. But as in for him, I don't think he can live a satisfied life knowing that he contributed, but it's under the Picasso name. Because
Yeah.
if he has an artistic inclination, it's a betrayal of himself.
But I think he
Well,
sort
I
of
think-
conceptualizes himself as contributing to Chartres. He's like,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
except
say.
Chartres in this case was started by Picasso, but he's like, he has secretly added his own, little design on Chartres, and says, "Oh, please, Picasso, I know that this building is yours, but look at what I did. It's good. I've contributed. Please just." He's like, all I want. He's like, give a dying man his dying wish. Just tell me what I've made is beautiful, that I've contributed to Chartres. And
Yeah.
Picasso's like, eat shit or whatever.
Yeah, which made
that's so. Yeah, I think that's super sad. That's super egoic. Like you're just stuck in this. There is no self-actualization there. Why does he need Picasso to say that this is
yeah,
great?
like he's
That's-
still looking
that's
to
weak.
an expert,
Yeah.
But yeah,
He's still living
and-
to this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that like the issue, like the underlying issue, might be that like Picasso's paintings aren't like anonymous or whatever. That the brand exists in the first place or something like that. That the idea exists in the first place, which is like the whole point with Chartres, which is like the whole idea is that it's completely anonymous, and that it's like if you contributed to it, you're only becoming a part of that anonymity. There's no, and the thing exists. Like there's no debating that your piece of it exists. It's like, so yeah, as soon as you introduce the idea that someone made it and that the fact that they made it is what makes it real, like suddenly there has to be some kind of verification or like confirmation that it is real or a part of the work, rather than with Chartres it's just there. Like, which I think there's a line in Wells's monologue where he says something about like, what does he say? He says something about it just like the best thing about it is that it exists or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that line.
What's tough is like on the topic of like looking up to the expert in order to verify whether your art is good. Like what's tough is that it is hard to know like whether your art is good or not, I would imagine. And that in some sense you're always looking up to something in order to verify it. And in a lot of the cases, like it is the market. It is like if people are willing to actually like buy and indulge in what it is that you're making.
Well, I think this relates to the Chartres idea of like, it says Chartres, a celebration to God's glory and to the dignity of man. He said, well, all that's left, most artists seem to feel these days is man.
Mm-hmm.
And like this obsession with the Picasso brand is like this obsession with man, and like, why is the grandfather not satisfied to create art outside of the Picasso brand? Like, what does he want to do? Does he want to contribute to Chartres or does he want to contribute to Picasso?
Mm-hmm.
He's seemingly just obsessed with Picasso, and all that's left, right? Like, one would think like the artist would want to celebrate, right? A celebration of God and the dignity of man, could create art like in Chartres, like in the corners, like there's a House of Jackpot reference, but like, in the corners, these small works that are never seen by man and are for God's eyes only. Is anyone following?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm just saying, like, the question is like, it's egoic, like Stephen was saying.
I mean, I think that if you're to make a work of art and the thing that you're making it for or whatever is, I mean, you could say like the market or like the social status or whatever as like verified by experts that it's real or whatever, that like there's no humility in that because the goal is attainable or something like that. Mm-hmm. Versus like if you're gonna create something for some kind of transcendent ideal or like God or whatever, as Wells says, that there's some kind of that it becomes I mean there's no verifying it. It's completely subjective and it's completely I mean, it's some kind of submission, some kind of total humility or something, right?
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah, I think submission and humility are good words. I think that, as cliche as it is, like when art is obviously treated by artists at times as like a phallus or an attempt at phallus. They want to create art that will grant them essentially what they believe to be the desire of the other. They think that this is what the world wants from them. And I think, though, that when we see the cases of people who truly subscribe to that idea, and I think that this is a not a good one, but I think that it's common in a lot of artists, maybe all. But for instance, people who win lots of Grammys, we look at them and we actually don't think of them as great artists oftentimes. We think of them, if you're into art, okay, you think of them as in some sense like cheating, or they've given themselves in, they've become like part of the market culture, whatever. It's not to say awards are bad in total, but it's when someone's art is only viewed through this sort of like award-winning lens. Mm-hmm. And like that's the only testament. Like if you can truly see the art as something like speaks to you or whatever, then it's different. But there's the Lacanian idea where you need to accept that the phallus doesn't exist. There is no object which will secure you the desire of the other, and that's part of living a relatively actualized life. I think it's one we could all agree is one we would want to strive for, because we obviously don't like the Scrooge that just accumulates money to no end, because that's clearly like a focusing of the wrong, like they focus their psychic energy on accrual of wealth. We don't like that. If that's all they do, a miser, if the wealth permits something, it's cool. If it permits some great other thing, it's different. And the same way, if an artist cares too much about their awards, that's a whack-ass artist. Nobody likes that. Now, if they win awards and it's in the background, it's in the periphery, but they're true to themselves, we like that more. And I think that I like the submission and humility idea, because I think that it is a submission or humility. The greatest artists, there would be some sort of acceptance that the phallus doesn't exist, that the big other is there, that there's an impossibility associated with their task, with relaying their subjectivity, and yet they thrive in it, or at least like submit themselves to it, and so they constantly create new and different art, change, and just seek to express themselves because it's all they can do. Mm-hmm. That's a good artist in my mind.
So,
in this pause, I'd like to point out something kind of sad. Just that, I don't know, I wish we were more equipped. I don't know if it's the medium or if it's the preparation and lack thereof, but something about talking about the details of the film. Like, I don't know, I feel like this is all very good and I like it, but it's like a discussion of like the ideas put forth in the film. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I wish we not talked more about the film, but could talk more about like it.
It's just really difficult. Yeah, it's just super difficult because it's like everything that Wells is using in order to put forth these ideas and discuss them are all I mean, I don't know. It's almost like a perfect use of the medium because it doesn't have to leave the medium to be perfectly discussed. Like, does that make sense? So like the tools that he's using are not best thought of outside of the film itself when watching it. Like to discuss them
Yeah.
is yeah. I mean,
like more
yeah.
self-contained.
Yeah, which
mean,
I think
I-
is
What's
just
so
testament
fun-
to how
what's so
good the
fun and
film is.
pleasant about the film is the film and its methods, and it's a story about a faker writing a book about a faker who commits a fake, all documented by a fake faker. And like, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there that I don't think we will, and it makes me sad.
How could
I
we?
mean,
I don't
That's
really
what
know.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying I don't even know how we would come to the table other than like with some sort of extremely fleshed out plan.
I mean, you'd have to just
codes.
go through that. You'd have to do
Shot
like a
by shot.
commentary on the film. Yeah, like in
All
order
right.
to talk
When are we
about
doing
it.
a
And
shot by shot?
Well, yeah, and what's the goal of that ultimately?
Yeah,
To
I
show
mean-
how a message is delivered, just to show how a narrative is built. Is that what you want to do?
Bro, signifier, signified. Yeah,
Well,
yeah. I
mean, I was
would.
gonna-
I'm basically saying it'd be so fun to do a shot by shot, so we could actually talk about the film.
I think
I mean, like-
I think when you do that though, it's gonna just resort to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, because like to me, like the film, maybe I don't understand it enough, but it's like, it's so direct in a sense in what it's trying to like say that like every single like scene that could be potentially talked about or a display of a message would, I think, inevitably lead to more of a discussion about the abstraction of the ideas rather than the film itself. And I think, almost all conversations about art, and you could even say like art itself, is more of like an attempt to lead into a conversation of the idea more so than the art itself. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm still down to talk about like the technique and the craft of the thing, which I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm like, of course, I'm interested in that, and I want to talk about it. Yeah, with this film, it just seems particularly difficult to do so, like to talk about certain moments and like, well, why was this put here, or why did this cut here, or why was this way, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and to respond, yeah, I mean, totally. It just seems difficult to talk about more so than most films. But also, just
Well-
to respond to Brody real quickly, I mean, what makes this film so fun and so interesting and so enjoyable is not some discussion of what is art and authenticity and authorship and value and, blah, blah, blah. Although that's really good and interesting and an important part of it, like that doesn't, in my mind, this conversation of art doesn't capture what is so fun about the film, what is so special about the film, right? Like, there's clearly value that we're not getting at, and I'm not saying we necessarily could right now, which is my lamentation. Anyway, go on, Steven.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think I think Brody used the word direct about what he's trying to say, which I understand what he means, and maybe he would agree.
Valid.
A different phrasing would be loud, because I don't think it's very obvious necessarily what's trying to be said, right? But it's just clear that there's a point to be made and that it wants to facilitate discussion. The whole second half of the film is essentially gearing up to get you to discuss. Like, I mean, like, even he himself is discussing the point of the movie he's making. And that's another, like, metafictional account,
Yeah.
And that's, so I think, now, I agree that we haven't captured what's fun. Mostly just, I think you said the word, what was it? You say, I don't know, I think hurricane or tornado or something.
Whirlwind.
Whirlwind, yeah. I mean, that's what makes it fun, clearly. I think that the extremely fast editing, things like this. But I don't think that, like, it'd be really difficult to just go through, like, the first half of the film, where it's less, we might say a little less, like, I don't know,
Grounded.
loud.
Okay.
Grounded, yeah. And point out why it's fun, like telling someone why something is fun is pretty difficult. Other than just, I guess you can explain how you felt during a scene, and like people can kind of get that vicarious enjoyment, and then maybe that would get them interested. But it's pretty difficult to say why something is fun and have it actually do justice to the thing, you know?
Yeah, for sure. You can never do it. You can never, right? Just like intersubjectivity. Like you can't communicate the special quality of film and the experience. But I think my point is something like, I think we could communicate the fun, the craft, the choice by choice timeline via some kind of shot by shot, super in depth. But then one would miss out on, a vital part of the conversation, which is what we're having here. And I'm just lamenting that it seems like we can't do both. Any kind of, just given this format, does that make sense? Like, I think we could do a shot by shot and be like, oh, so he does this, but this is just a redirection because he thinks we're going to talk about this, but then we do this, and this, and then we come back to this, and he acknowledges that, and that's funny.
Well, yeah, it would take a bunch of viewings too, if you wanted to do it.
Yeah, a lot
and
of
also, have you felt this way about other movies we've talked about?
Yeah, all the time. Much more so about this one, right? Like most of the films we've talked about so far, there's a very clear and relevant connection. Well, I think they're just easier to talk about visually and stuff. Like editing is just harder to talk about than composition and framing and imagery like that. And this is just like the tour de force of editing if I've ever seen one. So I think that's particularly what's difficult. But I always feel this way. Like I always want to do like a shot by shot because I feel like so much goes untalked about. And I think this was like really felt in like Dogville where there's just so much to talk about and just so little time. And like that's something like, I don't know, I don't even know what I'm saying other than like it would be fun to do a shot by shot and really talk about everything because it seems like when you watch it, so much is jumping out, so much is occurring, and it's all quite relevant. I don't know what I'm saying other than the obvious. A 2-hour podcast is not the perfect format to totally honor a great work of art. So,
yeah, it's a 2-hour podcast. A 2-hour audio podcast isn't the greatest format to talk about shot by shot visual
Like a
analysis
visual
of a
medium.
movie.
Yeah,
And
podcast isn't the base.
first time viewers also, we've seen it once. Like, I guess I know that what came at me was fast and fun, but geez, like I don't know. I'd shot by shot. I don't know. I couldn't have much to add without seeing it a bunch of times. I think because you're trying to contextualize it. You're trying to say that this shot did this, and this was important for this build up later, sooner, and
yeah. I'm just saying I'm noticing tons of things.
Yeah.
That, like Brody said, turns out a podcast isn't the best way to have a non-podcast. Podcast is canceled.
I want to say, just to say what to attempt the futile, just what the film like is like or whatever. Watching it, I don't know if you guys have.
Let's go.
I don't know if you guys have been to like a really good magic show before. Like and like no, I'm serious though. Like a serious. I mean, the same thing goes for like a really good like play or just any kind of live performance where it's a performance. There's like a performer, and you there's like a point when you realize that you've totally bought into this persona that they're putting out, and then they're like, well, look at this, and you're like, well, that probably isn't what it is, and then you watch it disappear or something, and you don't care, like you just are just so excited to kind of be a part of the performance and participate. And I think that is, and I don't know, clearly Wells is aware of this, like, because all the talk of magicians and the whole magic trick at the beginning, and he talks a lot about, I mean, I think Wells at core is very much like an actor and a performer, like, and you see this in like his interviews, like any thing that you see of Wells, he is very much giving off like just like radiating some kind of persona and performer. And the thing is you don't think of him as being like, oh, this is fake, like this guy's just putting on some kind of like this guy's just so self-absorbed into his ego or whatever. Like no, it's like you enjoy the trickery, you enjoy his playing of himself. And so, yeah, I think that's really what makes it like so fun is that, and then and then the magic tricks or whatever of the film are all is done in the editing, like foremost.
Steven, you have something? I also have something.
I was going to say a long time ago, this movie is to try and do the futile. And totally, I think this is exactly what John is saying, 100%. This movie is exactly like watching The Bachelor, like with all the girls on the couch.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Okay. I actually want to build off what John is saying, just to take it further. You know, if this is just a tour de force of editing, you know, what is editing other than like the manipulation and like orchestration of attention? And like a magician, right? Not like a child whose attention truly is manipulated, but like an adult who understands, right? It's a show, and sort of half gives in to the manipulation so as to enjoy the performance and be, you know, grabbed by it, but also resists, you know, the total manipulation. And it is very much like that. And but this idea of like the manipulation of attention and the person who controls it, and the editor, the god, the director, especially in the context of a documentary where it's all real, I don't know, just really slots in nicely with the content of like experts as the arbitrators of attention, and art as the object of attention, and the thing which is like self-edited so as to manipulate your attention on it and within it, and all these different things. Like I agree totally with the magician thing. I mean, I think that's like what the expectation Wells sets out to establish in like the first sequence, but also just sort of connecting it to the actual content of what your attention is being manipulated towards.
Would you happen to know if this film made any like sort of progress or changes or had any originality
Super original.
in its editing style?
Yeah, there's nothing like it, baby. First
Yeah,
of its kind.
I mean, yeah, and like it was not very well received. It was not well received. It was not a commercial success.
Commercially not well received. Within the upper echelons of Paris, it was a big success.
You know, this might totally flop, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway. So there was a bunch of scenes where like it would like pause on somebody's face for a little bit. You know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, like freeze frames.
Yeah, like freeze frames. And it was specifically like the freeze frame onto like somebody's face. And I remember when I was making videos as a child, I would do something very similar in my little Windows Movie Maker. And I was thinking about like where it is that I picked up on that sort of idea and that sort of like filming style, and if that was something that is original to the film to some capacity, or if that was maybe a pioneer and that like sort of resonated throughout film and became part of like the filmic language that I ended up picking up on.
I mean,
like maybe Wells wasn't being original, rather it was picking up on something pioneered by you in your
right. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I don't know if I can speak to the kind of historical like use of like freeze frames really, but I think the real innovation or whatever that's going on is the whole metafictional thing, which the freeze frame is definitely a part of the toolkit to do so. Like every time there's a freeze frame, it's calling attention to the editing, which I mean, obviously like French New Wave, which I'm not super familiar with, like it's famous for like calling attention to the fact that you're watching a film and blah blah blah, and like has this metafictional element. But I think that like what Wells is doing is so extreme because the narrative that's being followed is, I don't know, with other things that like try to call attention to the editing and stuff and the fact that you're watching something like manufactured by the director. Like with like Trier or whatever, he does this quite a lot. What he tries to do is try to create some kind of like tension between the two, and then try to get you to still buy the realness of the narrative, while still being aware that it's edited or something, or like Hanukkah
Like
as
Club
well.
Silencio.
Yeah, Club Silencio, like with Lynch and all this. Like this is all, yeah, it's to create some kind of tension, and I think that it does the same thing that Welles does with this, but Welles is, I think the new part of the form is like this completely abandoning of any kind of immersion in the narrative, by conventional like means or whatever, which you still have in a lot in like Club Silencio and Mulholland Drive and like Dancer in the Dark, blah blah blah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly what the innovation is, but it has something to do with that.
Well, I mean, I can't think of. I mean, I don't know every film, but right, I mean, this is the first film that I'm aware of where the story takes place in the editing room. I mean, we're constantly reminded of the fact that multiple films have taken place. There's the film just of Welles' narration. There's the film shot by, I feel bad for not knowing this guy's name. Whatever,
Reichenbach.
the other
We'll just call him Derek.
His name is Reichenbach.
Reichenbach.
Yes, that's his last
There's the
name.
film shot by Reichenbach, and then there's the film shot with Welles and Reichenbach when they return to Ibiza. And like we're constantly
Ibiza.
going in and out of these monitors. Ibiza. E-pizza. We're constantly going, like, right, we're Welles in the monitor, Welles in the editing room dictating to us the story, and then the camera comes in on one of the monitors, right, and we see all the editing and blah, 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 and we come out of that monitor and go into a different monitor to check in on a different film, and the story is taking place in the editing room as Welles is synthesizing all these films into one story as told through editing, and it's like, yeah, just what John is saying, like, I can't think of a single moment other than possibly the Chartres, but even then, you're not like, it's all so unreal and edited, and there's never a moment where you're not aware of the fact that you're watching this super edited, curated essay presentation thing. So I think that's what's new. Like, I can't think of a film that takes place in the editing room.
Yeah, versus a lot of the time when something like that calls attention to the fact that you're watching a film, it's like a break and then it pulls you back in or something like that, right? Like, as opposed to this, it's like a constant awareness. Or maybe the breaking of your suspension of disbelief or whatever is like, and you're going back into it is like extremely short and fragmented, as opposed to normally like with like Club Silencio or whatever in Mulholland Drive, it's like this pinnacle moment of the breaking of immersion.
But something that's like different about this is that in some sense, like, it really is a documentary, and a documentary is always going to have like the awareness of it being filmed element to it.
Yeah.
Because they're always going to be like looking at the camera and things like that, which is a lot different than French New Wave and other self-referential types of films, because they're breaking the fourth wall and other things in something that is attempting to be strictly a narrative. So like I almost want to like refrain from giving it like too much like self-referential credit because of its documentary style.
Well,
even though it is very different in the sense that like there is the editing room and there's those scenes where they're like the door will close and you see the mirror with the cameras and things like that. So like it does take it like a step further.
The pan to the other director or whatever. The film crew.
Right. So it does take it a step further, but documentaries already have that. Yeah. That style.
Well, I think the thing is that it's a documentary, and like, so obviously there's awareness that it's being filmed, that there's somebody behind the camera, somebody editing it, but then he then makes you aware of them it's like some kind of higher. It's like it's okay. Yeah, Troy,
Yeah.
go. Maybe
Yeah,
you
I
can
mean,
say
it's
what
like,
I'm trying to say.
I don't think it's ever even pretending to be a documentary. If anything, it's like a documentary about a documentary. Like one of the
It's the
films
film
is a documentary. One of the films is some type of like weird narration just to the audience, and the other is like a documentary about the documentary. And like like it's hilarious. Like you see them at the table. There's a scene where it's Irving talking to that Swedish woman or Swiss woman who like committed some kind of financial crimes in association with the hoax with the. Jeez, what is the airplane
Howard
guy's name?
Hughes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
and we see the camera right there, and they're paused, and then we hear him say "go," and then he says, and he starts acting like it's like he doesn't know cameras are there, like it's a documentary. You know what I mean? He's like, "Did you ever think Elmire could do all those paintings?" You know? So you've got like real people acting like actors, and they don't seem to know it, or something like this.
Yeah, and all the dudes.
Oh yeah,
Like
and all the dudes. Yeah.
All the dudes
there's
looking at Oya. He says it explicitly. Yeah, he says something like they don't realize that they're the best
they're
actors. or
acting their
something,
heads
but they're
off.
acting.
Yeah, it's like all actors except for one, and they don't even realize they're acting their heads off for us. Blah blah blah. And also in that sequence, Oya Kodar is exchanged with her real name isn't Oya Kodar, but whatever. Oya Kodar's sister gets swapped in for Oya Kodar, center frame on camera, and we don't even realize it, which is just sort of funny.
Yeah, maybe you don't.
Anyway, this is to say, like, I think that
I
I don't think it falls prey to this thing. Like, speaking of The Bachelor, like you don't believe it for a second because they're on like a soundstage, you know, and it's like, whereas here it's much more about the documentary, and then to sort of try and tie back to what John was saying about this self-referential nature, and like and contrasting it to like other films that reference themselves. It seems like those films, like the more classically narrative ones, bring attention to the filmic nature so as to bring your attention to something in the film. Right? Like the idea, like it'll point out some particular filmic element, and that element relates to the content of the narrative. Whereas here, the attention is always trying to bring your attention on the fact that your attention is being manipulated. Which maybe I suppose does the same thing if I want to say like the whole thing is about attention. Right? Like it wants to bring attention to the editing so as to bring attention to like the way attention is manipulated with respect to art and things like this. So okay, that was pretty unclear and rambly, and I started off saying I was going to say the opposite of what I ended up saying. I'll leave that. I'll just let that float away.
All right. Good try.
I've
Thank
been
you.
duped. You've just duped us all.
I've literally
Yeah.
been duped.
You charlatan.
I'm a charlatan.
Now I hate the film.
When he's eating the lobster and the waiter takes it away and he says, "Oh, and bring me the steak au revoir."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the whole thing is so funny. And when he's in the
Richard.
restaurant,
His name was Richard too. He's like
Richard.
Yeah, Richard.
Oh.
I'll have the steak, Richard.
Yeah.
and he's in the restaurant while he's telling the story, but the restaurant he's in keeps changing from shot to shot, and the setting, like I think it's meant to imply some continuity. Like he's in one restaurant telling you something, like it's supposed to be cutting back and forth between him with his friends in the restaurant and the story he's talking about, but the restaurant he's in keeps changing with each thing and new groups of people around him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, yeah. And another moment in the restaurant that I love is when the waiter comes up and says something, and then he edits it to make it look like he's like including the waiter and like telling him something.
Yeah,
And, like,
yeah.
Yeah. Also, there's
he acts like he actually has been interrupted by the waiter.
yeah, and the waiter like sits there and like reacts to what he's saying and stuff, even though clearly it's like edited. And I love oh shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, there's so many moments of just blatant voiceover. Like in the opening sequence, like there's a close up of him saying something, and his lips are moving, and the audio is just not what he's saying, like at all.
Yeah, he fucked it up there, truly.
Yeah, dude, he messed it up.
Yeah, what an idiot.
Yeah.
I could have been that.
Do you think? Okay, the real question, the one that's on everyone's mind, obviously, is
Could you get with Oyakodar?
well, okay. I mean, obviously, that's at the forefront of everyone's mind all the time. The wine, was it an accident when he spilled the wine?
When
Or
he
just
spilled
spilling
it?
on the.
You think that was an
Yeah.
accident, and then they just used it,
And then they just put it in.
and then
Goes,
they
"Ah,
show
shit."
it like 4 times, 5 times?
So funny.
It
Yeah.
becomes the motif of like erasing, kind of. It's like they show the spilled wine, and he's like, anyways, you know, and then it moves on to some
Yeah.
other thing.
And he says it before it happens too. He's like, "Here," he's like just literally describing what's on the screen. He's like, "Oh, we have a map. Oh, we're gonna spill this wine here,
Yeah.
and here on this little circled island. That's where the story takes place."
Right. It'd be so
Yeah.
funny if the wine was an accident.
I mean, if
They just said fuck it.
Yeah, whether it was an accident or not, I like the
Yeah.
kind of calling attention to the idea of like things happening that weren't planned for or whatever, and then them being manipulated in the editing room to mean something, which is like, yeah, I mean, some kind of comment on like how we narrativize
Yeah.
everything.
Magician
And
never
they-
reveals his secrets.
A negative review says, rambling, incoherent mess. This might be the most painful thing I've ever seen. I don't know where to start. I realized it was a long time ago, and that Wells is quite a character. He sure did eat a lot in this doc. To be honest, the
Jeez.
drama wasn't worthy of the subject. Unless you really need a nap, don't rent this.
Are these
So
1-star
people
Amazons?
are picking up on
That
this.
These
sounds
are
like-
these
yeah.
are these
That
are
sounds
people who
satirical.
refuse
Is this
to
1-star Amazons?
And 1-star.
Yeah,
Yeah,
these
these
are the best.
these
We
people
could write
refuse
something
to
so funny.
I don't know. They're the person who you go to show a card trick and they try to figure out what you're
Oh.
doing by like getting a different angle at what you're looking at or
Right.
something.
They go in there like
They
pick a
miss out
card
on
and they
the
like pick
whole
the one at
point.
the end.
magic.
Yeah, they miss out on that.
Right.
They miss out on the whole point. Yeah, people. Oh gosh, yeah, people. I mean, yeah. There's
Unwatchable. There's one
or-
1-star just
like
says
atheist.
unwatchable.
that I can't remember if it was in this essay that you linked Troy or somewhere else, or if it was in the Peter Bogdanovich like little interview or whatever on it. But he said something about like watching the film that it was the Peter Bogdanovich thing. He said something about like if you don't buy into the film and like give yourself over to the film, that you're gonna have a terrible time watching it and you're just gonna be lost and disinterested. But
Yeah.
that if you fully buy into the illusion or whatever, or like allow Wells to take you on the ride, then it's like a super enjoyable film. And I think that, I mean, the same thing with the magic trick or whatever. Like the person who thinks that the point of the magic trick is to figure out that it's fake, as opposed to like buying into the illusion or whatever. That you buying into the illusion is that you like getting the actual experience of the piece of art or the magic trick or whatever it is contingent on you buying into that and like giving yourself up to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Don't. But when you only give yourself up to an artist, had they already been accepted by the filmic community, by the commodification, by, I hesitate to use this, but like the big other, like, isn't that part of the commentary of the film? Is
Like you'll only participate in it if you have like proof that it is what it's promising to be or something.
Come up to you on the street and like give you a DVD. Like you're not gonna interact with it the same way if it was fucking Bergman or something.
just to add a little to John, like you give be a little boy and give Wells your object,
key.
your attention. Yeah, give him the key. That would definitely be my advice to someone.
Yeah, that would
My
be the
mom were
advice
to watch
to
this,
any
I'd be
art,
like-
right? Any art in general. Like in
Well-
general, that would be the case.
Oh,
Like
for
if you're
sure.
like even if you're showing like someone a fucking kids movie, like a 16-year-old's home film, like just give it a chance, right? And not just in the sense, obviously, if it's like super low quality, it's going to be difficult to do it, but more like give it a chance as opposed to immediately thinking that it's just the 16-year-old's home film, it can't be that good. Like give it as much chance as possible, right?
For sure.
Give this
I'm sort of-
podcast a chance.
Yeah, and give this, just like this podcast, give it a chance. No, but I think there's a little difference between what John and I are saying, of like versus like giving it the benefit of the doubt and like putting some faith in it so as to extract what it might have to offer. Just about the way in which like just a specific commentary on attention in this film, and like if you come into it trying to keep track of everything, it's not going to be a good time. Versus like moment to moment, just let it happen to you, as opposed to like trying to like keep a grip on what's happening. Otherwise, it's just going to be a whirlwind of impossible to keep track of information.
Bible quote time.
Oh, let's go.
Assuredly, I say to you, unless you change and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven.
So based.
Yeah.
So true, actually.
And there's like no. Unironically though, like I mean, it's funny, but like there's a lot of like
stupid.
a lot of verses in the Bible that talk about like making yourself like unto a child or whatever in order to
Just like Nietzsche.
Yeah,
oh wait,
it's-
dude, this is like this Lacanian idea. It says be like a child. You
Like
go to
poo-poo
heaven.
stinky, poo-poo stinky.
Or it's like that poopy stinky quote, Tarkovsky. You know, the child is like a little tree.
Yeah.
Old man
It's like that.
returns
It's
to
like
the
that poo
sapling.
poo stinky quote.
Obviously
With the book
based,
Poo
John.
Poo.
I think that I love feeling like a little baby when I'm watching a movie. Unironically,
Yeah.
I feel like it's
Submit.
just such a return to like childhood when we're watching a good movie.
Well, I wanna.
I suck on my
Hold
thumb
on.
usually.
I'm still.
If it's really
a little
good,
bit-
I'll find
I'm still a
myself
little bit
suckling on
stuck
my
on
thumb.
this whole like
Yeah.
giving yourself up thing. Okay, so like you imagine like you interact with some piece of art and like you don't get it, or you're confused, but it is like seen by the
doesn't happen to
community.
me.
Be seen by the community as this is great.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Continue.
So then at
Wait,
that
what
point
did
at
you
that
say?
point
Unironically.
what did I say?
Wait, who? Brody
Unironically,
or
you're
John?
asking?
Brody.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no.
you're interacting with some piece of art and like you don't really get it, or you're confused.
Can you talk
And
a little
they're-
louder? I can't really hear you.
You're confused and like there's not
Seriously, no.
Wait, I'm
thank you.
confused.
I actually
and you're
couldn't- I
confused.
actually
You're
couldn't.
confused and like there's not like you feel like you don't really like get it, right? And like maybe you're even bored by it, or you know it doesn't look good to you or some shit. but it's seen by the community as a whole that it's like
I don't know what's so funny. Dude. I think
It's fucking
I think
true.
this is a feedback loop between you and Troy right now.
Brody, I don't get it.
What? I can't,
No, I can't even hear Troy.
I can't hear Troy.
so God damn it.
All right. For all the viewers, Brody and Troy are just dying laughing right now.
So
All right, I'm done. I'm sorry.
so that you would interact with that piece of art differently had some bum or child given this to you. You would interact with trying to like you'd be trying to like
This bum child. I'll have a bum child.
so
Okay, yeah.
So you
But
know,
yeah,
and
what about-
you
yeah,
wouldn't
benefit
you
of the
wouldn't
doubt.
be like you'd be most it would be easy to discard the bum child's piece of art rather than fucking Godard's piece of art.
Maybe if you're whack, yeah.
So like you know, and then you'd be more inclined to like mine for ideas in the other one compared to the other one.
Yeah, but I don't see the point here.
Well, the point
I get what you're
is
saying.
that
It's
the
just true.
other and the other, that being what you could even consider the commodification, which is definitely part of it, is still is like necessary and plays a role in your interaction with what the art is.
It's not
But it's
just
just an issue of
commodification.
time. Yeah,
It's
it's an
not
issue of
I'm not
time.
saying it's just the commodification. I'm saying the commodification, as at least you know, especially these days in like a modern world. That
No.
Well, I think you're talking about
Uh-huh.
reputation, and then that becomes commodified, maybe.
Sure,
Sure.
but I would, for instance, watch a short film Troy makes,
Thank you.
who has no esteem to his like name as far as the
Yeah,
community
a bum
or the
child like
commodity of
Troy.
it goes. But I would be more interested in watching a short film Troy makes than like, you know, some bum child And so I would give a little bit more benefit of the doubt to Troy, perhaps. But I think ideal, and I mean that's that's reasonable. I mean, it's just because I know who Troy is, I know what he's about, and I know there's some sort of essence about Troy, right?
Yeah,
But
really good one.
and I know nothing about the Bum Child. Now, ideally, when you're watching the Bum Child, I mean, you should be giving it as much the benefit of the doubt as you can. The Bum Child piece.
It's just an issue of time.
Yeah, it's
If you had eternal life, presumably the right thing to do would be to watch every work of art as if it were made by God himself. You just can't do that. I mean, it just seems like am I missing? I mean, I get that there's a good point here, but it also is just like it's a matter of time.
I'm having this idea. I'm having this idea in my mind.
That's good.
That,
as my dad would say,
it's almost it's almost impossible to interact with it in the same way, and it's because of this reputation.
Yeah, well, why should you?
And then in some sense, there is this like feedback loop for like artists and things like that. Almost like like any sort of thing that becomes like popular, even.
Yeah,
I think
popularity begets more popularity.
Right. I think that
and not only that, but
yeah.
I don't know. I don't super buy this idea that you could be given a piece of art with no reputation and have the capability of interacting with it the same way as somebody with a reputation. I feel like you're always going to be giving the other one more credit.
Maybe you.
I don't know. If Troy made this film, I would be fucking blown away.
Yeah.
And I would really be talking about the same things towards the end of the film, I think. And not only that, I would have more there'd be something there'd be this new quality about this new artist, this new artist's greatness,
Brody, I think I think what you're saying is certainly more true about formats and mediums which are particularly inaccessible to the normie. Like I mean, it's just this, like Renaissance painting. I'm a normie. I don't,
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't distinguish between the greatest Renaissance painting and one that's just pretty good. But I am a world's foremost expert on Impressionism, and there, I know what's going on. Anyway, I'm just as a joke, but I think you're right about this sort of popularity begets popularity and benefit of the doubt begets benefit of the doubt. But if some bum child handed you a Blu-ray disc that had F for fake on it, and you at least hit play, dude, there's no way it's not going to blow you away.
That would fucking blow you away.
Just imagine like a homeless kid like walking up to you in the street and like handing you
Orson
a
Welles
Blu-ray.
walks up to me in the street.
Yeah.
Some fucking fat guy. He's like, "Hey, bro."
Hey, check out my mixtape.
Some fat 10-year-old.
Check out my tape, and he gives you F for fake. Like, you'll never be the same. So there's obviously quality here that's inescapable,
Okay, so do you agree? Do you agree at all that, like part of a quality about something comes from its reputation?
Of course.
Or do you think like reputation is strictly from the quality of the art?
I mean, it depends.
Yeah.
Not strictly. I mean, look at, there's countless films or other things where.
Or you look at Academy Awards and things like contemporary Academy Awards, and you think, no. I mean, so it's not and yet they have great reputations within some sphere, right? Yeah. And they're winning awards, and yet there's clearly some quality that's lacking.
Yeah,
and then everyone's mom will talk about how awesome that movie was.
I mean, there's some kind of like the culture built around certain things or whatever, and what gets socially approved or whatever is like kind of socially ranked as being the best of this medium or whatever, of this artist, or who's the best artist. Like, obviously there's going to be like imperfection at different scales or whatever, depending on like what the culture values in this. But like the idea is that there's certain groups of people in certain social spheres that will have some kind of balance of like appreciation from like this childlike perspective and what their peers think or something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's lots of examples of films whose reputation totally precedes them. Like 2001, right?
Sure.
Like this seems like a totally emblematic film who has a fan base who loves to be seen loving it,
Right.
right? But
And at that
also
point, well-
incredible film.
Yeah, but when I see this thing that like clearly like has this like aura around it of like, if you like this, you are now legit. You like good art.
Yeah.
And like
Okay.
at that point is when I become skeptical, you know,
Uh-huh.
and of at least how good it actually is.
Oh, for sure.
But then like I sort of then get in my own head when approaching the piece of art about like, you know, not giving myself up to it completely and being, you know, a skeptic, and that's a problem.
Well-
I should talk to somebody.
Well, we've
about
had
that.
this we've had this conversation before. You and I disagree, I think, in that you suspect that giving it the benefit, like, that you will fool yourself into liking a movie more than it deserves. Whereas I think you should approach, you know, if you're going to devote the time to actually engaging with some art, you should give it the full benefit of the doubt. And if it doesn't deserve it, it will become like that will be clear to you.
but even
Whereas I
that,
think
even that,
you're worried about liking something more than you should.
well, even that I'm skeptical of is like like if I have given myself up something to completely,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm actually looking at a fraud, I'm looking at a fake,
Uh-huh.
then, you know, like what am I exactly? Like maybe like had I approached it perhaps differently, with skeptically, then I would be able to discern between the greats and the
But
non-greats.
what does that get you?
Yeah, you.
I mean, if you feel that the fake is great, I think it's done no harm to you, and you've done nothing but received some joy.
yeah, and
Like
be skeptical later.
There's a good to it. Like I think, for instance, that's why this whole question of like, is fakery good or bad, that we were talking about earlier. I mean, I think clearly, you know, you could make the case that, oh, the grandfather who, from the film, obviously I'm not talking, the grandfather who produces the next phase of Picasso and everybody enjoys it and he's provided so much pleasure to the world. I think that in itself is, like, for the people enjoying the art in the museum, if it's good art and it speaks to them and they enjoy it, there's no problem to that, you know? Like, there's no worry that it's from a fake. And I think that's fine. And there shouldn't be a worry that it's from a fake. Instead, the art should be, you know, I mean, like, I suppose if
problem
your
is
enjoyment of the art
subjective.
is the biography of Picasso, and then you associate the biography of Picasso to these people or to these pieces, then there's a problem. But if your enjoyment of the art is beyond just the biography of Picasso, then it's totally fine. I think it's okay. Which I think ideally your enjoyment of art should be beyond just the biography of the artist, but I think that can play a role too. But my point being that if you were sold a fake and you really like the fake, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think it's not like the nature of fakeness isn't on you, it's on the creator. You know, you don't have to worry about if it's a fraud piece or not. You just enjoy it or not.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that the problem that we were discussing earlier, like the problem with the fakery, is only with the artist who's making it. Like it becomes
Right.
it's like it's
Yeah.
the
Right.
subjective self-actualization problem.
If anything, you would want to watch Step Brothers and have a transcendental, or a
Transcendent experience.
a transcendent, profound experience. You know, in which you derive great value. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I wish, bro.
Yeah.
If only.
No, and that happens sometimes.
Okay.
Like people have their little
Yeah.
guilty pleasures, and
Yeah.
a guilty pleasure isn't actually something to be ashamed about. Of course, we say it that way, but it's totally fine. And like people have those transcendent experiences with little things all the time.
You know,
Elf
but
makes me
I
cry
mean,
every
it's
time.
I think, but it's worth mentioning that these things, like people have an idea of what is a guilty pleasure, of something that they find fantastic, but they understand to like
Right.
maybe not be as good, or culturally
Yeah.
is like.
Yeah, punch that idea.
Yeah,
Fuck
it's
that
cringe.
idea. But of
Cringe.
Well,
course,
I
of course
mean-
you're right. That is, yeah, you're right. It
Yeah,
is
but I
popular.
mean, I think like maybe don't fuck that idea just because it's such an idea. It is something that is like within the ethos of like like common like thought amongst interacting with pieces of art.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Elf makes me cry every time. Elf is awesome.
Like if someone enjoys The Bachelor, I mean like
Wait.
Yeah, this
Of
is
course-
we're entering
That's too
different
far.
I'm just
territory.
kidding.
That's
Yeah, too
right.
No,
far.
of
You're
course-
taking this too far.
No, but I'm not, right? I'm not, obviously. Like, there's cases where people will just enjoy something, and I mean, like, is it great art? I mean, it doesn't even matter if they think it is or isn't. They're just enjoying it. They're for them to say it's great art, you would hope that there's some similarity of what great art means to you. And now that doesn't mean that we both see the same things as great art, but rather the experience of what great art is should be similar. So if someone watched The Bachelor and they like cried at times and felt this rush of like meaning and like fulfillment of life, or like this investigation of this certain aspect of human subjectivity that washed over them and they loved it, the way you would with a certain film that you enjoy,
So
the way that Troy might cry for Elf, like these pleasures are on the receiver. They're not on the
so if
the
But it's
art
still fair
piece.
to
If-
fair to
if-
say that like they've been tricked. Like from the, like from the perspective of the beholder, enjoy the beauty you can get. But
Right.
for me, watching someone, bawling at The Bachelor, I think it's fair for me to say wrong.
No.
Like taste
So,
is
okay.
no, I'm not on like some like total relativism of taste.
No, I'm not. But I'm saying that, I mean, art can be ranked hierarchically. You can say something is great art versus not. I don't agree with this whole like, one then this then this then this.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
clearly you can separate things into categories. But for that, you're really just going to be appealing to one, your subjectivity, two, the subjectivities of lots of people. Like I don't think you can get beyond this. Now,
No,
I
for sure.
Right, and I think that both ideas are compatible. You can say that because The Bachelor doesn't include this transcendent experience for so many people, and that you're an oddball if you think you're having a transcendent art-filled experience. Even the people who like The Bachelor would not say that it's great art.
Yeah.
The people who like The Bachelor, what I'm describing about this Bachelor person is this very oddball person who says that they had a transcendent experience
Yeah.
while watching The Bachelor.
Yeah.
And for that, I don't think they've been faked. I mean, I think that it was associated with their entire life experience and some sort of everything going. Yeah. Okay.
We're agreeing. I'm saying
Okay.
it's right to acknowledge the legitimacy of their transcendent experience insofar as they claim it to be. It's also legitimate to be like, yeah, but The Bachelor is like entertainment garbage.
So would you say that? So somebody comes up to you and be like, "I think the greatest film ever made is Inception," and I've seen Godard, I've seen Bergman, and like those things that I don't like those things so much. The Inception is the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
Like, would you?
I think I'm talking to the mirror.
Well, would you not? And honestly, would you not like think of them as like less sophisticated, or as in some way lesser taste?
I wouldn't. I would see them as just, we have like obviously totally different subjectivities. Now, I mean, the problem aspect is that there'd be such a difference that I would look down probably to some degree, but I don't think that that's like good, and I don't think that's necessary. That's just something that happens based on like my relationships with people. But there's tons of people who can be both. I think like Roger Ebert is somebody who, for all his faults, was still like a man of the people as well. So he might not see that or a similar movie comparison, maybe not Inception, but like he wouldn't see that person as lower than him. He would like love to talk about that movie a little bit, because he's a man of the people.
He gave
Now,
Paul Blart a high score.
Right. So I think it's on my end, I might look a little down on them, but I wouldn't think that they're like so grossly wrong. It's more like there's such a clear difference between them and I. Like I don't actually see it as less than though. I don't consciously see it as less than, but I'm sure I would interact with them as if their tastes were less than.
Yeah, I think I'd have a similar feeling, and then to put it maybe, just to add something, I think I usually see it as like our interests lie elsewhere. Like, so, like if I want to, is imbue the right word? Sort of assume they have like all the proper faculties and things like this, then it would just be like, well, our interests lie elsewhere, and my interests are better. But I'm not better. I sort of said that tongue-in-cheek. The audience can't see my funny face. But
It's hilarious.
Yeah, like but you're saying that's effectively like that's how you would interact with them, that you would have this feeling that you're better, that your tastes are better, but they overall, like, ultimately you're not like
Yeah,
you're not,
I just don't think
you're not
think-
superior to them.
it's-
just-
No, I'm
it's
not
strange.
superior. Obviously not superior to them anyway, and I don't think sophistication is definitely not the right word.
Well,
yeah.
but the thing is, like, there is this like cultural like phenomenon of the idea of a more sophisticated, more adult form of taste, and you could even take it like literally, like people who drink whiskey and people who drink like their coffee black. Like
Yeah.
it is generally considered to be like a more sophisticated way of indulging in these, types of things, and
Yeah.
it's definitely a thing,
No, it's super a thing.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
really uncomfortable to interact with people. Or it's like, oh, movie boy Troy's coming in. Oh, hey, Troy. We just went and saw, Transformers. What do you think? And it's like really uncomfortable because everyone already thinks that I think I'm better than them or something like this,
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like some weird uncomfortable situation. And I really just want to be like, Transformers is awesome. Like, it's sick. It's doing what it tries to do and all these things. I'm interested in a certain kind of film because I'm interested in a certain kind of topic. And I think inherent to being interested in something is
Nice
some.
slip. That was really good.
What did I say? Imparent?
Imparent. Yeah, that was really good. That was so good.
In
What
mommy,
the hell does that mean?
no, inherent to being interested in something is asserting a preference as like a value, right? It's like I'm interested, in the human condition or something lofty, and it's like inherent is like I think it's more important, or I think it's more valuable a way to spend time than being interested in, like robots or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the social
look,
community. of
even the
watching
way
some
even the way you
ridiculous
even the way you
things.
put that,
Yeah.
I honestly think was in some sense like looking down upon them, and like maybe you say like, oh well, I'm only looking down upon them within my own subjectivity because I think like my,
Well, no, what,
or some shit like that.
What I'm
but
saying is, there's
And
no
even-
escaping value preferences, right? And then I can say, of course, I value something different from you, but that is held at the same time with, I think the thing I value is better than the thing you value. If
Right,
it is the case, I don't value what they value.
I really think that there's something to be said for like this cultural understanding of what is considered to be like high values,
Lofty.
and I think that is demonstrated in the fact that like somebody can come up to you like, oh hey movie boy Troy, I just saw Transformers, what do you think? Like there's an understanding even within themselves that there is something not quite as sophisticated about Transformers compared to some other shit, and in the same sense that like black coffee and is considered to be like the staple of like a maturity and or of a like a mature way to like
Like Tanner.
drink coffee.
Yeah, I just don't think. I mean, I agree that this idea exists, but I don't think it's right or accurate. And certainly, sophistication is not tied in. I mean,
Yeah, black
There-
coffee. I don't like that idea.
yeah,
itself,
and black
like-
coffee isn't even sophisticated. I don't know. Of course, it's a cultural thing, and people want to come off as sophisticated and intelligent and highbrow. But I think it's just
Like
a question
us.
of value and beauty. Like I see.
Yeah, but I'm just saying like I think there's something to be said that like almost everybody can like understand that this is at least
What are you saying
Like,
that there
yeah,
is
you
to
gotta
be
get-
said?
Yeah. What?
well
Because
like
we
you can
agree.
ima-
We
like,
agree.
like,
It is this way. But what do you?
right, but like
we're saying you don't like it. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, imagine you're like making a character, like you're writing a book, and you want to like make this character to be some like ultra like mature or like ultra like manly type figure.
Uh-huh.
Like you might have
Right.
them like
Cultural-
drinking
yeah,
like
you're
black
gonna-
coffee or like
Right.
having a cigar,
Sure.
and things like that. And
Well, no.
I don't know.
If
I don't
I
want to.
know,
I don't
I-
want to
yeah.
like. I don't want to like undervalue, like what it is that the culture is trying to say, like and to throw out the idea that is like so culturally embedded, I think is a mistake.
What about
To say that it's just wrong or that it like doesn't mean anything.
I mean, it's
If you
something
wanted
you
to
shouldn't
make
try
the
to
highest
live
man,
by.
I mean, look at Lafise. This is a depiction of a man I think is far more great and lofty and, you know, I don't like this word right now, but sophisticated, right? And he is a surface, like, culturally unsophisticated guy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm just saying, I agree there's something to it, and I think there is something more sophisticated about drinking black coffee than just drowning it in sugar. But like, this isn't to discount. I don't know. I just don't. I mean, there's definitely a cultural conception.
I mean, well, there's something to be said. There's something to be said because like when you start drinking coffee, it's much easier to drink, and when most people start drinking it, it's like it's loaded with like sugar and and cream and things like that, and make it easier to go down. And then like as you age, you're able to sort of like reduce those things, and then begin to drink it black. It's sort of an acquired taste, and it is a literal sign of like progress to some capacity. And you could even say the same thing for like films. Like when you're a child, you mostly are watching like Pixar films, you're watching Transformers, and then as you get older, you start to acquire the taste of these sort of other films. So like there is something like even literal about the term, even.
But what's the end? But what's the end point here? What's the end point? Like,
I don't even.
I mean,
remember
didn't
what
this
my-
start?
You're saying
You were
there's something
saying
to be said. Yeah.
You were saying
Yeah,
that's
like,
true.
I-
I agree. Sorry, what are you saying, Tanner?
like how it
Well, like-
influences you as the viewer. Isn't that how it started?
Yeah, like reputation or something.
Yeah, like because you say you want to like punch that idea out, like it's bad, but
Yeah, you shouldn't
like,
live by it. Yeah, you should try your best to not live by that. I think.
It obviously
I still stand
exists.
by that.
Yeah, don't let it.
But yeah, it
influence.
seems the more you become,
Like, I don't think I
Familiar.
should want to look down on somebody for watching Transformers. It's
not
it's
want
certainly-
to,
Right.
but
And not just not want to, but I don't think it's good to. And so
But
maybe
say in your own life, like may you want to acquire the more sophisticated quotations form of indulgence, like because people like will like want to like start to drink like nice whiskey, aged whiskey, and they'll start to do it and they don't even like it at first, but they have like this idea of what it is that they want to become. It's interesting how that's even the
people
case.
will
I have
want
an
to
analogy.
become something, but
But
I
then-
still
but-
just don't get the point.
I think.
But
I
then,
have a- I have-
you
I
could
have a
say
point.
that like once they actually acquire the taste, that there's something even like it's
Yes.
even better, right? Once they actually get through that difficult process, better than anything else that they could have been drinking beforehand had they have been less sophisticated. And you could even say that it's like part of the arduous process of trying to actually get to that
Okay.
point.
Okay, but it depends on how you frame the like situation. So, like, it depends on like your conception of like utility and why you're doing what you're doing. Like, to make it analogous to just any game, for example, CS:GO or something, right? Like someone who's just learning how to play and isn't familiar with all the intricate details and sophistications of the game, right? And like the metagame and blah blah blah, right? They may pick up some bad gun or something and employ terrible strategies, right? And although you, in a position of like, I don't know, supreme understanding of the game, or at least more advanced understanding of the game, you say, well, that's not a very good strategy given what the objective of the game is. But I don't think you're worse than me. I think you aren't as familiar with the game as I am. So
Okay.
depending on how you frame the mission of art and the mission of engaging with it, right, you might think, well, if you're not really familiar with the medium and a lot of films so as to contextualize more quote-unquote sophisticated films, right, it like liking Transformers is sort of, in my mind, a part of that. Is
Yeah,
this making,
yeah,
is this analogy making
sure.
sense? So, but it depends on how you contextualize like the mission of film. Like I'm trying to like, gain beauty,
Right.
and I think part
Right.
of beauty is like honesty, and I see Transformers as like, in some way, fundamentally dishonest with respect to its objections and the way it communicates to the viewer. right? But part of that acknowledgement of dishonesty is having seen a lot of films and thought about film and whatever, just being familiar with it. And so someone who's like, oh, this is like the awesomest thing ever and I love this epic tale, it's like awesome, right? There's nothing worse about you. It's that I seem to think that you're not as familiar with the medium or whatever as I am. And given the assumption that we have the same objectives, which may not be true,
Right.
that's important.
It may not be.
Yeah,
right.
and
That's
may not be true.
that's
Yeah.
what's
If we have
super
different-
important.
Yeah, if we have different objectives, then we have different values, and of course, implicit is me thinking my value is more important than yours. But if we have the same objective, then it's just a matter of becoming familiar with the medium so as to gain access to quote unquote more sophisticated films. Like, you know, a lot of films just a lot of films just aren't going to make sense if you haven't like gone through some kind of prerequisite viewing or something.
Some games are
Prereq-
better than
prerequisite.
others.
Okay. Well, I could talk about it more, but we should wrap it up.
Yeah, so Orson
Unless
Welles
somebody
made
else
this
has
great
anything.
film that we all enjoyed.
Yes.
F for fake.
Yeah, so you should just watch this movie
Instead of
because
listening to
we
our
can't watch it
podcast.
for you. Usually, we can watch the movie for you. This time, you might actually have to get your hands dirty. Okay, well, we've gone over the 2-hour mark, so I think it'll be fine though. Hopefully, Spotify will still accept our file.
You can always just do. We could do parts. We could start splitting things into part 1, part 2.
We could do that. I think it'll take it.
Troy, you wanna give your-
There's also a beginning bit.
Give your final
All right.
thoughts.
Final thoughts and scores. Mine. I think one must watch the film and must like the film. So good. If you don't like it, I'm smarter than you. And just a real hoot of a time. Really fun, really funny. Just a great exciting experience, and definitely a masterclass in editing and like thinking about attention. Oh, I'm gonna give it a 4.4.
Whoa.
Mighty
Way
score.
higher than I thought.
Yeah,
This
it's
is a must watch, bro.
yeah, it's a great movie. I think that it's like anybody who watches it and allows themselves to be fooled will enjoy the film immensely. And that, I don't know, there's tons to get into, and I love all the shart stuff, and yeah, I'll give it a 4.3.
I love Shard.
I agree. My rating, the highest so far that I've ever given something,
Oh,
Oh my god.
4.4.
damn.
Troy and I are twinsies today.
Oh, aren't we always in spirit?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I don't have much to say.
Okay. Brody? Or no, Joll?
Yeah, Joel.
I'll give it a 4.1. I don't really know what to say. I really like it. There's so much you can get out of it every time you view it, and it does a lot. Like with the context of the world of film and its relationship to reality, I thought that was good. So yeah.
I'm gonna stick with my intuition here. I'm going to give it a 3.8, making me the odd one out here. I thought it was very fun, very quick, really great, although it's going to miss the must-watch category for me.
No.
Maybe just watch it again.
Maybe I didn't watch it again.
Wait, so was this whole final discussion just a way of trying to protect yourself from,
Yeah,
from
I'm
looking worse than
justifying.
us?
Yeah, I'm justifying.
All right. Well,
No, Brody wasn't fooled.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brody
we're all
was a
fooled.
fool.
Yeah, Brody was
I'm
like-
gonna send it.
yeah. All right. Cool. So allegedly tomorrow we'll have a podcast about the book club podcast. Is that right?
100 pages.
Um,
First 100.
We're supposed to have 100. Yeah, first 100 pages.
yeah, first 100 pages. Podcast.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, all right, whatever.
Okay. Well. Okay.
Whatever.
Also, yeah, whatever. We can stop recording, but
We're not stopping.
Okay, I want to put forward, perhaps we should cut a chunk out of the art of this discussion about guilty pleasures and whatever, and do that as a separate podcast, like
I
a 30-minute, and call it the Guilty Pleasures podcast, because it has nothing to do with the film, but it's so good.
That's true.
I feel strongly that nothing gets cut. And if we want to do a separate podcast, we do a separate podcast.
Okay,
We went off topic. I don't know.
that's cool. If anybody else has an opinion, they can express it.
Yeah, if you
If
want
not,
a
it's
fucking
fine.
shit podcast, that's fine with me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't really care.
I don't know. I'm particularly focused on the archival nature of this podcast, and I know
Yeah, that's
Steven. I
fair.
know the suggestion
that-
doesn't mean excluding
right.
anything. Okay,
Right.
let's wrap
And
up
it-
this,
it-
and then
in
let's
my
talk
mind,
about
it's useful for archival purposes because it sections it as.
it organized. Okay, let's wrap this up.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Yeah, later.
See ya.